Tell us where the kids are. That's all I want to know.
She said, you're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now.
We're gathering together as saints, as brothers and sisters, and preparing for the second coming of Christ.
She needs some serious help. I want her to get help.
You ever had something that you knew was the right thing to do, but it turns out that later on it was a felony?
I turned around and he hit me in the back of the head with a bat. I went to my room and got my gun.
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks. Like, hi neighbor, sorry.
We did respond to an unattended death at the Daybell home, and Tammy Daybell was deceased.
A former friend of Lori Vallow Daybell tells the jury that Lori threatened to kill her.
Where are your kids?
No comment.
No comment? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
Every minute of every day where Lori's not saying something, it's a slap in the face.
Where are my brother and sister? Can't be that hard to answer.
He fought coming into this world. He was 30 weeks old. I'm leaving it.
One day, you will know. Murder. One day.
Stop worrying, Mom. We are fine.
She made choices, horrible choices. She's going to have a miserable life.
Lori Vallow Daybell, a mother accused of orchestrating the murders of her 2 children, was motivated, according to prosecutors, by religion, love, and her attraction to a self-described doomsday prophet named Chad Daybell. This is Victim to Verdict. Rexburg, Idaho, surrounded by the Teton and Sawtooth Mountains, sits 90 minutes from the western entrance of Yellowstone National Park. The people living in this section of eastern Idaho say they're closer than most, in part because nearly everyone living here is Mormon.
It's probably the area. We're all LDS, the majority of us, and I think that's probably something that draws us all together.
So in November of 2019, when news that 2 children from a local Mormon family were missing, it immediately grabbed people's attention. Nate Sunderland is the managing editor of the East Idaho News.
People were interested in the story right from the beginning. We don't normally get missing kids news releases that are like this, and it just continued to get bigger and bigger.
16-year-old Tylee Ryan and her little brother, 7-year-old JJ Vallow, their smiles now on a missing poster, hadn't been seen in weeks, and their mother, Lori Vallow, apparently wasn't cooperating with police.
Typically, when a missing person is reported, it's the parents that call us. And so when we posted this story, I think people immediately knew that something was fishy.
Eventually, the FBI was brought in to help, and the story started to spread far beyond eastern Idaho.
You have 2 children who have vanished, and their mother, beautiful blonde Lori Vallow Daybell, doesn't seem interested in finding her own children. Immediately, the nation was captivated by this story.
JJ's grandparents, Larry and Kay Woodcock, were the first to sound the alarm. The Woodcocks had a special relationship with JJ.
JJ was in neonatal ICU, NICU, because he was born 2 pounds and 14 ounces, and he was 10 weeks premature. He was our baby from, just instant fall in love. That's what you do with grandkids. You just fall in love immediately.
JJ was adopted by Charles and Lori Vallow when he was 1. But before that, he lived with his grandparents, Kay and Larry.
He's autistic, so there's, they have issues.
Charles and Lori got him and had him in the special schools. His intelligence level was unbelievable.
Even though JJ went to live with Charles and Lori, the Woodcocks, Kay and Larry, were still a major part of JJ's life. The 3 of them would often talk on the telephone and FaceTime.
Charles Vallow died in July of 2019. After he passed, the Woodcocks and Lori had a falling out. But Larry and Kay still desperately wanted to see or at least talk to JJ. But Lori had essentially cut off communication.
I was emailing her and begging her, please, we will fly to Arizona. We will fly to wherever you are. Give us an hour with him.
The fallout between Lori and the Woodcocks was partially over money, $1 million. Before Charles Vallow died, he switched the beneficiary to his life insurance policy from Lori to his sister Kay.
I didn't ask for that. He did it because he knew we were going to end up with JJ.
Yeah.
Or so he thought.
After Charles died, Lori essentially cuts out Larry and Kay from JJ's life. And remember, this little boy means the world to the Woodcocks. Eventually, they become so frustrated that they contact the Chandler, Arizona Police Department.
That call from Larry and Kay Woodcock would set off what would become a months-long search for JJ and his sister Tylee. Police tracked down the children's mother, Lori, in Rexburg, Idaho, where she'd been living for nearly 3 months. There was no sign of JJ or Tylee, but Lori wasn't living alone. Her brother, Alex, had also moved to Rexburg at the same time and was renting a unit in the same complex. And in the apartment next door to Lori, her niece, Melanie Boudreau, who had come to Rexburg along with Alex and Lori, leaving her children behind in Arizona.
Lori, I'm Lieutenant Vallow Police Department. How are you? You got a minute?
This is a recording of the first and only interaction between Lori and police, talking about the whereabouts of her children.
Are y'all alone, or is that help?
My brother's here.
So JJ would be where?
He's in Arizona.
Who's he with in Arizona?
He's with one of my friends in Arizona.
Lori would tell police that JJ was with a woman named Melanie Gibb, and his sister Tylee was off at college. Then she started to ramble.
It is very weird. I've had to move around a lot. One of my brothers is trying to kill me. Not the brother that lives here, obviously. He's kind of my protector.
She even brought up Kay Woodcock and the $1 million.
What happened was my husband, who we were married for 15 years and had raised all these 5 kids together, switched his life insurance policy to her, right? To his sister, who got $1 million when he died. And we got nothing for me to raise JJ, and all the kids got nothing, and everybody got nothing.
That day, police also had a strange interaction with Lori's new husband, Chad Daybell, who at first claimed he didn't know Lori's phone number. It was obvious that something was wrong. So the next day, police returned with a search warrant. But Lori and her new husband, Chad, were gone.
There was food in the refrigerator, food in the pantry. Everything had been taken off the hangers, and there was no clothes in the dresser drawers.
Chad and Lori are gone, and it's clear that they left in a hurry. So for detectives, there's a new level of urgency for this matter, but they had no idea how twisted this case was about to become.
Coming up, Lori tracked down in Hawaii.
Where are your kids?
No comment.
No comment? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say?
Plus, Lori's new husband, Chad Daybell.
Living on the edge of heaven, where I tell more about my 2 near-death experiences and how that prompted me to write my novels.
And frustration grows.
But tell us where the kids are.
Kids, y'all know that I love you. I want you home more than I want to breathe.
By the first week of December 2019, just days after the unsuccessful welfare check on 7-year-old JJ Vallow, an all-out search was underway for both JJ and his older sister Tylee Ryan. The children's mother, Lori Vallow, who told police that JJ was in Arizona and Tylee was in college, had vanished, along with her new husband, Chad Daybell.
We attempted several times to get a hold of Lori, and her cell phone was shut off. We attempted to get a hold of Chad and never gotten any return phone calls. And in fact, they retained an attorney and refused to answer any questions.
Investigators quickly determined that Tylee was never enrolled in college, and Lori's Arizona friend, Melanie Gibb, who originally lied to police, she confessed, saying she never had JJ. She was only covering for her friend Lori.
She told me that the police had been there asking for JJ, and that she told the police that I had JJ, that I was at a movie called Frozen.
Weeks would go by with no significant leads, and by early January, concern for the children's safety was growing. Larry and Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandparents, were doing everything they could to keep the story alive.
Please, for God's sake, please step up. These are beautiful young children. We want them back.
This is Colby Ryan, Lori Vallow's oldest son and Tylee Ryan's half-brother. Unable to get a hold of his mother, he posted an emotional plea to Lori on YouTube.
I'm your son. I would never want anything to happen to you, and I would never want anything to happen to Tylee and JJ ever. I know you know the right thing to do is, and I know that you have a good heart, so I know that it's time to do the right thing.
Lori Vallow is on her 5th marriage. Her 3rd marriage to Joseph Ryan, Tylee's father, ended in 2004. Joseph Ryan died in 2018 of an apparent heart attack. Lori's 4th husband, Charles Vallow, was a stabilizing force. Married for 15 years, Lori and Charles adopted JJ together and helped raise Tylee and Colby. Kay Woodcock is Charles Vallow's sister.
So it was just a family unit, and we were part of the unit, and we loved each other.
If somebody 2 years ago would have said, this is what's going to happen with Lori, I would have never believed it. Kay would have never believed it.
As the search for the kids and Lori and Chad continued in mid-January, Nate Sunderland, managing editor of the East Idaho News, says they started getting a few tips that Lori and Chad might be in Hawaii, a place Lori was very familiar with. She and Charles lived on the island of Kauai for a few years with JJ and Tylee.
The police were going to go there, and they were going to try to either make an arrest or try to force the issue of coming back to eastern Idaho. We were able to go.
Did you do something to your children? Are your children still alive? That's a simple question. I've got 3 kids of my own. I can tell you every minute where my kids are at. Where are your children?
The video of Nate Eaton with East Idaho News questioning Chad and Lori immediately went viral, and it infuriated everyone who watched it, because here's this mother who just didn't seem to care about where her children were.
Listen, just tell people what's happening. There's people around the country praying for your children, praying for you guys. Why don't you give us answers?
That's great.
That's great. That's great that they're praying for you, praying for your kids. What? You have nothing to say?
With Lori and Chad now located in Hawaii, prosecutors back in Idaho came up with a plan to bring Lori back by filing a child protection order.
It instructed her to bring her minor children to the Rexburg Police Department or the Department of Health and Welfare within 5 days of being served.
And there's body camera video of Lori being served with that order. She and Chad are sitting outside, laying next to the swimming pool.
Do you need something?
Any questions?
Do you have any questions for that?
Lori's in her bikini. Chad has his shirt off. They sure don't look like 2 people worried about missing children. And the book sitting next to Lori is called Visions of Glory, and it's about the end of the world.
A few weeks later, with still no sign of Tylee and JJ, Lori Vallow was taken into custody by Hawaiian police.
Was transported here to the Kauai Police Department headquarters and booked into our cell block, where she stayed until she got taken to her court appearance earlier this morning.
First of all, Ms. Vallow, do you understand that a demand has been made for your surrender by the state of Idaho?
Yes. Lori's first court appearance in Hawaii was short. The judge set her bail for $5 million, and it was in front of a full courtroom. Sitting there in the second row in a white shirt, blue tie, her new husband, Chad Daybell.
Chad was there again in early March when Lori made her first court appearance back in Madison County, Idaho, wearing red lipstick and an orange and white jumpsuit. Also there, Larry and Kay Woodcock and Lori's son, Colby.
My whole plan is to try to go figure out a way to actually speak with her and, be able to get in front of her and just ask her son, just try to plead with her. Ask her where Tylee and JJ are. It can't be that hard to answer.
Colby Ryan was able to confront his mother in a very emotional phone call.
You think you can hide from me? Holy
because you murdered my siblings. That's probably why I'm hugging you. Maybe you should understand.
I didn't. I'm sorry that you felt that way.
You didn't do anything, right?
You weren't there. So
you're right. I wasn't there. I was kept.
That's right. And one day, you will know.
Murder.
One day, you will know what actually happened.
You're right. You know what?
And we all will stand there with
everything. You're absolutely right. He will convict the people who act in his name with pure blasphemy. This is funny? This is funny?
Coming up, 2 dead spouses. Chad Daybell's wife mysteriously dies just days before his marriage to Lori. Plus, Lori's ex-husband, Charles.
So what makes her a danger to herself and to others?
Threaten me, murder me, kill me.
A Wisconsin woman accused of killing her friend with eye drops.
And then defrauding her for over $250,000.
The state believes this defendant has evidenced her capacity to take advantage of at-risk individuals.
Was the victim trying to commit suicide?
Or was she murdered for money?
The Eye Drops murder trial. Live coverage next week following jury selection on Court TV.
In March 2020, Lori Vallow was back in Rexburg, Idaho. Her Hawaiian beach clothes replaced with an orange and white jumpsuit. Her husband, Chad, still by her side, supporting her during court appearances. Meanwhile, investigators still had no idea where her children were, and frustration over Lori and Chad's refusal to produce Tylee and JJ was starting to boil over.
I only have one question. Where are the kids?
At this point, it had been months since anybody had seen JJ or Tylee, and it sure didn't look like their mother or her new husband seemed to care.
While Rexburg police and the FBI were doing everything in their power to find Tylee and JJ, police in Chandler, Arizona were investigating Lori for another reason, the death of her 4th husband, Charles Vallow.
I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense. Is he hurt or is he alive or? Yeah, there's blood. He's not moving.
That's Lori's brother, Alex Cox, calling 911 in July of 2019, saying he had just shot and killed his brother-in-law, Charles Vallow.
You know, no weapons? No weapons on me. All right, come on out this way.
When police arrive, they find Alex by himself at Lori's newly rented home.
I'm gonna have you have a seat right here on the curb.
Inside is Lori Vallow's 4th husband, Charles, dead on the living room floor.
What happened today? How did it get to this?
Alex told the officers that Charles came after him with a baseball bat, saying it all started between Lori and Charles and that Tylee brought out a bat.
And then your niece pulls out a bat?
Well, it wasn't her. He was getting close, and she came out to defend my sister with her bat.
Your niece?
Yes.
Okay.
And then she poked at him, and then he took it away.
Alex said Lori and Tylee left to take JJ to school, and it was then that Charles came after him with that bat.
I turned around, and he hit me in the back of the head with the bat. So I went to my room and got my gun.
You went to your room, meaning the room you're staying in?
Yeah.
Okay, and you brought a gun with you?
Yes.
Do you always bring a gun?
I'm concealed carry always.
Then Lori and Tylee show up.
Hi, who are you? Okay, just stand over there for just a second, guys.
And then I told him to put the bat down, and he wouldn't, and he came at me again.
And the wife just showed up as well.
And I said, I want you to put that bat down, and he wouldn't do it. And he's like, and he came at me with the bat again after he'd already hit me in the head, so I shot him to stop him.
Lori's brother Alex is sitting on the curb telling the police this story, but there is no emotion in his voice. He just killed another person, but he doesn't seem fazed at all.
Then it was Lori's turn to talk to the police.
We just moved in here.
Gotcha. How long have you guys lived here?
I'm sorry?
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors don't know us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi, neighbor, sorry.
The story of what happened to Charles and Alex and Lori's demeanor was suspicious. An investigation was immediately launched. Larry and Kay Woodcock didn't believe it for a second.
That was the most bull story that I have ever heard in my life. That was a setup, a absolute setup murder for hire.
Remember, Kay is Charles Vallow's sister. She knew that Charles and Lori were having problems. Charles had recently made Kay the beneficiary to his $1 million life insurance policy, which Lori was about to find out.
She ran across, I imagine she was searching for the change of beneficiary form in Charles's file she had in Arizona. And she took a picture of it and she said, 5 kids and no money, and his sister gets everything. That was the last interaction with Lori.
Yeah, last communication.
Lori's ex-husband's death wasn't the only one being investigated. In Idaho, the death of Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy, was also raising suspicion.
Tammy Daybell was a 49-year-old woman in good shape. She was an avid runner, and suddenly she passes away in her sleep.
Chad and Tammy Daybell were married for 28 years before Tammy's death.
They had 5 children. They lived out in little old Salem. He held religious positions in the LDS ward. They were kind of the quintessential Latter-day Saint couple.
Together, Chad and Tammy started a book publishing company. Chad was a prolific writer, authoring more than 30 books, most of them about his past visions and the end of times. Like-minded authors like Chad and Tammy's friend Julie Rowe used the Daybell's publishing company for their books. After Tammy's death, something Chad told Julie about a vision that his wife would die now seemed suspicious.
I did ask him, Chad, do you still see Tammy dying? And he said, yes, I do.
Also suspicious, Chad declined to have an autopsy performed on his wife, and there was his behavior at Tammy's funeral.
He recited many things that were not asked for. And concerning the details of her death. He told us what happened to her that morning. He told us that she had since been to visit him and is helping him set affairs in order, giving him direction on how to handle certain children and their future and even where they should live, what schools they should go to. He told us all this in just the space of 2 minutes.
At their funeral, he didn't stay there very long. He was upbeat. He was talking to members of the family like nothing was wrong. It didn't seem like it mattered all that much.
Most disturbing, however, just 10 days after Tammy's death, Chad was on a beach in Hawaii marrying his new wife, Lori. Coming up, Lori and Chad.
I think she did a bit of chasing. She was like a Chad groupie. And I think he likes that attention.
And the dark turn of Chad and Lori's religious predictions.
Says I'm Nick Snyder. I'm taking over Charles's body. And Charles will get killed. I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow.
On November 5th, 2019, Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow exchanged wedding vows on a beach in Hawaii. Chad's wife, Tammy, of 28 years, had only been dead for 2.5 weeks, which, for friends and family back in Idaho, was difficult to comprehend.
Chad marries this woman who is beautiful. She's blonde, she's thin, she's very athletic. It was bizarre that his wife would just die and that he'd hook up with someone so quickly.
Chad, who, according to court records, received $430,000 in life insurance money, tried to explain his wife Tammy's death to Lori's friend Melanie in a phone call she recorded.
Tammy had been getting weaker and sick, and I begged her to go to the doctor. Her heart was failing her. She was physically falling apart, but she hates doctors, and she just passed away.
And there was something else about Tammy's death that didn't seem right.
Lori used her dead husband, Charles's Amazon account to purchase matching wedding rings. But this is 17 days before Chad's wife, Tammy, is dead. She clearly knows that Tammy is about to die.
Chad and Lori's beach wedding came just over a year after they first met at a religious conference. Lori's friend, Melanie, was also there. Chad was a featured speaker.
He talked about the different visions he had of what he saw was going to happen in the last days.
Chad's visions, which he claimed started after a near-death diving accident when he was a teenager, made him a celebrity of sorts within a small community of like-minded Mormons that believed the end of the world was imminent.
I've recently released my autobiography entitled Living on the Edge of Heaven, where I tell more about my 2 near-death experiences.
He would have meetings at people's homes where he would sort of promote his books. He would usually have 20, 30 people. He would just talk about the ideas in his books and what he saw in visions. And they were enjoyable to listen to, and I felt they were genuine.
The LDS faith accepts that some people have visions, and Chad let it be known to anyone who would listen that he was one of those special people, that he could see the future and the past.
According to Lori's friend Melanie, Lori and Chad had an instant connection and started communicating and seeing each other to discuss religion and Chad's visions. In December of 2018, they were featured together in a religious podcast.
We're gathering together as saints, as brothers and sisters, and preparing for the second coming of Christ.
It was obvious to Melanie Gibb that there was some chemistry between Chad and Lori, and that they had a relationship that went beyond just their doing podcasts together and discussing the end of the world.
Over the next few months, Lori was also starting to have visions, and Chad told friends that he had lived several past lives on different planets and that he and Lori had actually been married before.
The way he described it was that his veil was more open than it had been, and he started remembering some of his past lives.
Then in early 2019, Chad and Lori's beliefs, according to friends, started getting darker and stranger, including visions that certain people around them had turned into zombies, their bodies taken over by evil forces. One of those people was Lori's husband, Charles Vallow.
Her religious stuff is gone way off the deep end. Okay. Just way off.
Charles was so concerned about Lori's behavior, he contacted police, telling officers that Lori believed he, Charles, had been taken over by a zombie named Nick Schneider.
I've tried to support her as much as I could, but it's gotten really, really bad. Lately, she's had a break. She says, I'm Nick Schneider. I've taken over Charles's body, and Charles has been killed. I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow. I can do it. I'm not going to get my priesthood power. She has priesthood blessings.
Charles also told the officers that Lori had told him that she had special powers and that in a past life she had been married to the angel Moroni, the figure seen holding a trumpet on top of many LDS temples.
She thinks she's married to Moroni in the past.
You think she's what?
We're married to Moroni, the top of the temple.
Angel LDS.
And she knows when the second coming is happening next year, so does the prophet. It's scared the crap out of her.
Okay.
6 months later, Charles Vallow was dead. Coming up, Alex Cox.
A lot of people believe that Alex Cox is the family hitman. Lori and Chad would decide who needed to die, and Alex made it happen.
As the bodies start piling up, one person seems to be connected to them all.
He believes that Alex Cox was the person who fired that shot.
By early March 2020, Tylee and JJ had been missing for nearly 6 months. Lori was in jail. Chad was back in his family home in eastern Idaho. Neither one were talking. Investigators released these photos showing Tylee, JJ, Lori, and Lori's brother Alex Cox. The images were taken on September 8th at Yellowstone National Park. They were the last evidence of Tylee alive. The FBI was now asking for anyone who was at the park that same day to check their photos and send them to investigators.
This message from the FBI that, they wanted more information for the public, it was very evident that there was a lot of information about this case that maybe they couldn't quite piece together.
What investigators did know was the last day both Tylee and JJ were last seen. And on both days, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, was there. He's there in the Yellowstone photos on September 8th, and he was also there the last time JJ was seen on September 22nd. This is doorbell camera video of JJ running, captured on September 17th. The next week, on the night of the 22nd, Lori's friend, Melanie Gibb, was visiting Lori. She brought her boyfriend, David Warwick. The three were recording a religious podcast when Alex Cox walked in with JJ.
He was staying with Alex, and Alex brought him home and carried him to bed.
But the next morning, both Alex and JJ were gone, and the explanation that Lori gave was bizarre, saying her son had turned into a zombie.
She said that he was being a zombie and climbed up on the cabinets, climbed up on top of the fridge, smashed her picture of Christ down, and then climbed up onto the upper cabinets and got between the top of the cabinet and the ceiling. I asked to see him, and she just said that he was out of control, so she had Alex come and get him.
Remember, it was Alex Cox that killed Lori's fourth husband, Charles Vallow, claiming it was self-defense.
He came at me, I shot him to stop him.
There was another incident possibly connected to Alex Cox in early October of 2019. Melanie Boudreau, Lori's niece, who moved to Rexburg at the same time as Lori and Alex, her soon-to-be ex-husband Brandon says somebody tried to kill him.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone just shot my window.
Someone shot at your vehicle?
Yeah, and it hit my window. It shattered my driver's side window.
Brandon had dropped off his kids, and he was coming back from the gym to his house. And as he pulled up to the curb, a shot came from a nearby Jeep that was parked on the opposite side of the street.
The bullet hit Brandon's Tesla, missing his head by a few inches. The shooter's Jeep with Texas plates was registered to Lori Vallow's ex-husband, Charles, who at the time had been dead for more than 2 months. Brandon says he didn't get a good look at the shooter, but believes he knows who it was.
He believes that Alex Cox was the person who fired that shot. He knew that Alex Cox was kind of the family hitman, and he just fairly quickly came to the conclusion that it was Alex Cox.
Around the same day Brandon was shot at, Lori was seen with an unidentified male loading a spare tire and what appears to be a vehicle seat in and out of a Rexburg storage unit. Also in October of 2019, another suspicious shooting, possibly tied to Alex Cox. 10 days before Chad's wife, Tammy, mysteriously died in her sleep, she called 911 to report that she'd been shot at in her driveway by a man wearing a mask. She thought maybe it was a paintball gun, but now authorities investigating Tammy's death aren't so sure.
While Tammy Daybell believed that someone tried to shoot her with a paintball gun, the investigators thought it was actually Alex Cox sent there by Lori and Chad to murder Tammy.
12 years before Alex killed Lori's fourth husband, Charles, he served 3 months in a Texas jail for attacking Lori's third husband, Joseph Ryan. According to the police report, Alex Cox used a stun gun on Joseph Ryan and threatened to kill him while accompanying Lori during a child custody exchange. Alex would actually joke about it years later during an open mic comedy routine.
You ever had something that you knew was the right thing to do, but it turns out that later on it was a felony?
Alex Cox was a possible suspect in Charles Vallow's death, Tammy Daybell's death, the shooting of Brandon Boudreau, and the disappearances of both Tylee and JJ. Of course, the connection between Alex Cox and all of these people was his sister Lori.
They had a very, very close relationship. When they moved to Rexburg, he was in the same apartment complex. And we know that he also believed the same sort of religious things that Lori was believing.
Then on December 12th, 2019, another 911 call. Someone else was dead.
911. Where is your emergency?
Sorry, I need an ambulance. I have a older male here named Alex. He just passed out here on my bathroom. I think he's passed out.
Okay, you think he's unconscious?
Yes.
On the same day that investigators were exhuming the body of Tammy Daybell, Alex Cox mysteriously ended up dead. The official cause of death was a pulmonary embolism. The children were still missing, and now one of the main suspects in their disappearance was gone. Coming up, a major break.
Throughout the investigation, detectives and investigators have recovered what's believed to be human remains.
Chad Daybell under arrest after Tylee and JJ are found buried in his backyard.
They dug a little bit more around the round object, which appeared to me to be the crown of a head.
As spring turned to the summer of 2020 in Rexburg, Idaho, there was still no sign of the missing children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. It had been 8 months since they'd last been seen. Their mother, Lori Vallow, had been in jail since February, and her new husband, Chad Daybell, was not cooperating with police. The couple's bizarre religious beliefs included the thought that the end of the world was coming.
At this point, people thought JJ and Tylee were either dead or hopefully they were in some sort of end-of-the-world bunker being taken care of by Chad Daybell's followers.
Friends say Chad and Lori believed that not only was the end of the world coming, but when it happened, they would be leading the 144,000 chosen ones mentioned in the Bible.
So the book of Revelation has a chapter in which it talks about how when Jesus comes back to the earth, or in anticipation of that, then there will be 12,000 elders or members from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so when you do 12 times 12,000, that's how you get to 144,000.
Chad and Lori also believed that evil spirits had taken over the bodies of people around them, calling them zombies. Lori even told her friend Melanie Gibb that her own children, JJ and Tylee, were zombies. According to Melanie, Tylee had overheard her mother talking about it on the phone.
Tylee hears her mom say that she's a zombie, and according to Melanie Gibb, Tylee responds, "No, Mom, I'm not a zombie." How heartbreaking, because Tylee knows what it means to be a zombie in her mom's twisted head. It's incredibly sad.
Then, on June 9th, almost 9 months to the day after Tylee was last seen, Rexburg police and the FBI served a search warrant on Chad Daybell's home. They'd searched the property before during the winter when the ground was frozen. Now they were back, interested specifically in the backyard.
I observed the evidence response recovery team and also cadaver dogs working the entire backyard. So they worked the pond area, and then they had marked off other areas inside the backyard.
Something stood out in the pond area on the north side of the property. Fresh sod on top of several rocks. Beneath the rocks, some paneling.
As soon as they removed the paneling, I could smell the odor of a decomposing body.
It was JJ. The 7-year-old's body was buried in Chad Daybell's backyard, wrapped in plastic and duct tape.
And then as I cut through the white plastic, that's when the, possible human hair started coming out onto my hands. And that was the point where we determined this is human remains.
Then they started digging in a pet cemetery. They found Tylee, dismembered and burned.
They had located what would appear to be a mass of burnt flesh and charred bone.
Earlier that morning, before the remains were located, Chad Daybell was watching the evidence response team in his backyard when he received a call from the Madison County Jail. His wife, Lori, was calling to say hello.
Are you okay?
So there's property.
The house right now?
Yeah.
What, are they in the house?
No, the property.
Are they seizing stuff again?
They're searching. I love you so much.
Thanks, I love you. Should I try to call you later?
I don't know.
After the phone call from Lori, Chad decided to take off. He was picked up and arrested by investigators immediately after they found the first set of remains.
Now both are in jail facing murder charges. Lori ends up being the first to go to trial. There were no cameras allowed inside. The courtroom was packed, and Larry and Kay Woodcock were there every day.
The defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, used money, power, and sex, or the promise of those things, to get what she wanted.
She was a kind and loving mother to her children. The evidence will show she had a particular interest in religion in the end of times.
The defendant told others that with the help of Chad, she could rate people as light or dark. And they evolved to, well, a person could be so dark or a spirit could be so evil that the person actually becomes a zombie. You can't cast a zombie out. But a common theme was the body had to be destroyed.
In order to make sure a demon doesn't come back, the body has to be destroyed in some way.
Correct.
Burning is one way.
Correct.
Is there anything about binding?
I believe so.
So she had told you prior to the move to Rexburg that JJ2 was being attacked by demons.
Correct. Right before she moved to Rexburg, she said that Tylee had been possessed by evil spirit or a demon.
We determined her cause of death to be the result of asphyxia, and her manner of death to be homicide.
Did Lori indicate whether or not she thought it was okay that they were engaging in intimate relations?
She did. She felt it was according to God's will.
You don't get married 4 weeks after you just buried your wife of almost 30 years. You just don't do that. And we found out it had only been 2 weeks after she had been buried.
From Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow, I need so badly to just gently kiss you for hours. It would likely lead to other activities. It would luckily lead to nakedness. Just grab me by the storm, and I will follow you to the ends of the universe.
Are you aware of what some of the phrase, grab me by the storm and I will follow you to the ends of the earth, meant?
The word storm is the name they had given to Chad Daybell's penis.
The jury took 2 days to deliberate, and when they reached their verdict, you could hear a pin drop inside the courtroom. Lori stood up with her attorneys on both sides of her, but still didn't show any visible signs of emotion.
Is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan, of Joshua Jackson Vallow? Answer, guilty. Is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell? Answer, guilty.
Before Lori was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, she had something to say.
Jesus knows me, and Jesus understands me. I mourn with all of you who mourn, my children and Tammy.
In addition to the 3 life sentences for the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy, Lori Vallow also faces charges in Arizona in connection to the death of her husband, Charles.
Something was taken from us and from our friends and our family that obviously we can't replace. JJ and Tylee should have had an unbelievable life ahead of them. Lori is going to get and receive what she reaped.
Yeah.
She's going to have a miserable life.
I think she'll be in her hell on earth.
She made choices, and it was horrible choices. She has to say to herself some days, what was I thinking?
Shortly after her conviction, Lori Vallow Daybell filed an appeal asking for a new trial. As for Chad Daybell, he is facing murder charges for the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and his wife Tammy. He has pled not guilty. His trial is scheduled for the spring of 2024.